Oh, thank goodness. Oh, folks, good morning.
Morning. Good morning.
I have been, hold on. Echo, anyone?
I can hear you.
Can hear you.
I have been on YouTube since 9:20 trying to get live and having no success. And just literally 30 seconds ago, I figured out whatever setting it was that was not working. And it seems to be, we seem to be live.
I've shared your struggles myself, Andrew.
Yeah, there's a button apparently. Something has changed on YouTube, but it seems to be working. So that's all I can say.
Good morning, Judge.
Good morning, Mayor Prather and Scott and Jessica.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Looks like everybody is safely in their office spaces, wherever that may be.
Indeed.
Jessica's got
Andrew, you got
really
more.
good working.
Andrew, you've got more hair than I've seen you with in a long time.
Right? I mean, look at that. Look at this mullet.
Mine's terrible.
You look like you're in a Beatles cover band.
I know. I know. I'd said the same thing.
And
Feeling
Jessica,
very
when she's looking down
60s
writing, we can
Ringo
see
Starr-ish.
that bun.
That is a serious bun.
Well, hey, like a good Powell County boy, like a good Powell County boy, I found the bootleg burger here in Madison County, so I've been staying on track.
I go next weekend and I literally can't wait.
Good for you. Well, it looks like, Andrew, have we got everybody on that we're supposed to?
We do. You missed the part of me telling everyone I've been on since 9:20 trying to get YouTube Live to work, and literally at 9:59 I figured out whatever setting was wrong, and we are live. Everyone is on, and I'm going to go back and double check one more time just to make sure nothing has broken. But I'm turning the meeting over to you all.
Okay, Andrew, and the media was notified of this meeting should they choose to.
They were on the invite. They've given the invitation and the agenda. So yes.
Sounds good. Then if I could go ahead and call our meeting to order, please. Jessica, if you would let the minutes reflect that all three commissioners are present on the Zoom call, so no proxies necessary. Each of you, I think Scott and Jessica had already sent out the minutes from our last meeting of April 22nd. Is there a motion or any corrections or addition to those? And if not, I'll approve a motion. I'll accept a motion to approve as presented. Kevin has made a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
And second, All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Minutes are approved. Scott, I'm just gonna kind of turn the agenda over to you in part here. It looks like first thing we have is an audit engagement letter.
Yes, sir, that's correct. Miller, Mayor Stevens, and Sullivan have sent us our engagement letter for our audit this fall. So I will include that in the packet that's coming over to City Hall. I believe you signed this last year. I'll have to sign it as well. And there will also be 3 months worth, I believe, of bank statements, which was in the items requiring no action attachment that I also send, but with this email, but they'll all be in the same packet for you. So I will include that.
Sounds good. Thank you.
But I think, Andrew, do we need an approval to proceed with that?
You're
Sorry, I
muted.
was muted. Yeah, you should.
So moved.
Thank you.
I'd like to second that.
And motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There are none, so that is approved. Scott, it looks like next on the agenda, we have one refund request.
Yes, sir, that's correct. And that was sent as an attachment. The details with that, it is $10,412.16 total. And based on, you can see from the letter attached, we agree that this should proceed.
Good. That documentation is so helpful for us, Scott. Thank you.
Good.
Is there a motion to approve this refund request?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, Dr. Hub. If there are no questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That carries. Item 6 on your agenda, Scott, compliance tool request for commission approval.
Yes, sir. Jessica and Andrew and I have been talking for a while about using this as a tool to encourage folks to be compliant. And a project Jessica's been working on is some of the attorneys that have an issue with us and being delinquent. And Andrew had given Jessica permission to try this as a test with one particular attorney, and it has yielded some results, positive results. So we want to get the commissioner's approval based on Andrew's recommendation to move forward with this with all attorneys and maybe even every licensed occupation within the state where we can use that as leverage. But I'll let Jessica and Andrew kind of take the lead on this one.
And I think that first and foremost, the idea would be that we give these folks an opportunity to respond before we do anything by sending out one more correspondence that says, look, we've been trying to contact you forever, getting no results. If you don't get back to us, here's what we're going to do. And what we're going to do is we're going to contact your professional licensing body, whether it's the Bar Association or the for architects and engineers, whatever their professional licensing associations are, and let them know that these lawyers are continuing to practice and not paying their taxes. And we did that on one, and it got prompt attention. And I think Jessica did a little bit of research, and it's pretty clear that for lawyers, failure to pay your taxes is considered a violation of your ethical standard. Oh, Jessica, you're muted.
Here we go. Sorry. So yeah, sorry about that. So it's actually written as a specific note on the Kentucky Supreme Court Rules of Conduct for attorneys. Note number 2 says that if you engage in a pattern of behavior where it's clear you're attempting to evade taxes, and not just federal taxes, the case was specific to federal taxes, but then there's been elaboration by the Supreme Court that it also includes local tax obligations, including payroll withholding and occupational tax. So at first I thought it was just the federal, but that's not true. That if there's a pattern where these issues have occurred over a period of multiple years, that can be proof positive that there's unethical conduct that could be occurring, and based on the facts, it can warrant anything from suspension to disbarment. And there's 3 specific cases in Kentucky that have shown that. We had one attorney that hadn't responded to our office in 9 years that continues to operate in front of City Hall and has done a lot of business, is very prominent, I would say. And he hadn't filed taxes since 2003, but the last response we'd received was, almost a decade ago. So we sent him a notice saying, this is the history of your account. This is the balance that you owe, because he had a sizable balance as well. He had sent in multiple letters saying that he was going to pay it back when it first accrued, and he never did. And so I kind of laid out those facts and said, here's what's happened. Here's the history of this. You haven't filed in over a decade with this office. In addition, you've sent multiple notices that haven't been followed through. It's not our job to determine whether or not that's unethical, but here's what the rules say with regards to attorneys behaving this way. Here's the case law that supports us sending this to you. We're going to give you a period of notice before any action is taken. Our best resolution would be for you to contact the office to get a payment plan in place, or to pay that obligation and file your taxes. And if that happens, we won't do anything moving forward. And so within 2 days of receiving that, the attorney reached out. He did request 30 days to file taxes, because he has to file all the way back to 2005. And he sent in a check for $7,500, which took care of the majority of the balance that he had established with the office. And he's supposed to have those additional filings, which would be, he has 2 accounts. So 2 accounts for the past 15 years by July 15th. So that's kind of what happened with our test case. And again, this is someone that's had ample notice. Multiple letters, I think 38 had gone to that account. So
Jessica, I'm just going to wager that if we did an overlay with people who don't pay parking tickets, we would probably get a pretty congruent overlay. So it is,
sorry,
folks.
I was just going to say that both of the accounts where we've kind of looked at this and said, is this both have also had multiple issues with the IRS and the state and things like that.
Yeah. It sounds to me like a pretty effective leverage. And it seems to be a fair application of that leverage. Any other thoughts on that, or from commissioners?
I just want to make sure it definitely would not be the first. I mean, there's been so many steps prior to anything like that being considered. Like I said, 38 notices, hadn't filed for 15 years. I mean, he's definitely we've met due process with that account for sure.
We just realized that before we start this new method, if you will, of trying to collect, that we ran it past you all, and you all are okay with that as a policy. As with everything, we are picking the ones that are the most egregious, the ones that we have tried and tried again, and we're not, somebody who fails to pay one time, we're not going to jump straight to a method like this.
I'll move to approve the new policy.
Thank you.
And I will second that motion.
Yeah, I thank you for cutting to the chase. That's exactly. I think
Well, I didn't want to cut Andrew off, but
No.
yeah, I mean, yeah.
Staff's case.
Just briefly, while we're talking about it, we have spent a lot of time in the last few weeks talking about trying to sharpen up our enforcement. And you're going to be hearing more from us in the next. We're hoping at the next meeting in June to bring you essentially a recommendation for changes to all of our local ordinances for the enforcement mechanism to match up with what we now know is legal requirements for collection through civil and criminal processes. We are just sharpening up the tools, and we'll hope to bring it to you. So the next meeting we'll have a little bit more info for you. I just wanted to kind of set that table for you.
So Jessica, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of that motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Good. Then Jessica, that policy is approved as requested. Thank you. Scott, it looks like now we have, any comments on that action, Scott?
No, not at all.
Good.
Thank you all.
Yes, sir. Looks like we have a preliminary budget presentation.
Yes, last Friday when I sent out the packet, email packet, the budget was in there. It is the preliminary. The footnotes, there's also always a footnotes tab with some additional explanation. A couple of things to talk about here with the budget. We did cut $21,980 from some items. Obviously, it does not look like there's going to be any conferences to go to. And some of our bills actually went down a little bit, some went up a little bit. As always, salary and expenses, there's the biggest increase. And in fact, every single category except salaries and expenses and related expenses and the depreciation and amortization category, all the other categories decreased in what I proposed in this budget versus the amended budget that was approved in December or January. So all that information is in there for you. I've got it up on one of my screens here. All of the red numbers in column I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Those are the individual line items that did increase, and the green ones are the ones where there was a decrease. We did not put increased rent in there. We left it the same because we're unsure on where we're going to go with the water company, potential move to the water company building. So I left that the same, and if we want to readdress that at the 6-month period, we can. And then also with that up in the air, I did put an asterisk in the footnotes regarding GMWSS, but also you'll see highlighted in yellow on the budget is the physical security countermeasures. And in prior budgets, you had approved the full $25,000 quote we got for the physical security upgrades here. Just to kind of review the timeline, you approved that. We made a $6,500 deposit. That's why $1,850 is what's remaining in the budget now. There was a delay by the contractor. We waited and waited, and they had delays and delays. And then finally, by the time they got to us and said, okay, now we're ready to start, then we were looking at the water company bill. So we kind of put all that on hold. So that's just in there flagged so that you're aware that you've already approved that money. But I have, just as kind of a last resort, reached out to that vendor to say, how much, if any, expenses have you incurred on materials for this if we were to have to cancel this, either because we're going to stay here indefinitely or they're going to have to rebid it if we go at some point to the water company building. But I did want you to know that in addition to the water company itself, they're kind of intertwined and they're very much up in the air because it could go a lot of different ways. But I kind of played it safe in the budget regarding that. And that's really the only things at this point, unless Andrew or Jessica want to add anything that I wanted to point out.
Yeah, I think the budget that you presented, Scott, is consistent with the way we're developing our budget and the way the counties develop their budget. I'll remind the commissioners that when we revised our budget in late 19 or in the fall of 19, we accommodated a change in the salary line item and made some personnel changes. And those are simply reflected in the new budget carrying forward.
Yes, and one other thing I'll point out, I'm glad you mentioned that. You'll notice in the proposed budget that the salary line item itself is actually a decrease from the mid-year budget amendment. And that's because when we hired our admin over from Robert Half, that actually saved us considerably on the salary itself because we were paying a premium on the hourly rate because it's, a temp essentially. But of course, then you saw all the other benefits and expenses and everything increased because not only because of her, but also you approved at the mid-year also hiring on an additional tax compliance analyst when Jessica moved into her new role. So just wanted to point out that that was the one area where, still that category, salaries and related expenses, went up significantly as it typically does. But that was one bright spot that we saved that money that we had budgeted for last year.
Good.
Scott, what did the vendor say in response to your question, or have you had a chance to?
I have not
reply back?
I've not received a response yet.
My concern is that, I mean, I'm sure we can work through it. I just don't want to, I don't want to leave the vendor hanging out there when we've essentially told them we're going to do this work. And at the same time, I don't want to waste money on a facility if you all aren't going to stay in it long term. But the question might be, is that upgrade worth doing regardless? Could it accommodate a different department down there, or is it specific to the Revenue Commission?
Well, the countermeasures recommended were based on the risk assessment we did. So it was very much specific to us and our needs and the confidential information that we have, and the potential physical security threats that we faced with the way this is structured down here. Now, if we were to leave and go to the water company building, I know the judge and Devin have been over here touring, looking at maybe some other options at some point. I don't know that those physical upgrades would be a detriment to whoever would come in after this, but
It's basically a door and a transaction window.
well, and the sticking point was that if we're going to go to the water company building, we're going to need that same money, and it's all,
Right.
We're going to have to make those adjustments there. So we were just going to say, hey, you're going to have to come out and remeasure, but we'll still use you. There may be some additional costs. We might be able to save some costs depending on what the situation is. But the thought process was, well, let's don't spend it here because we're going to need to spend it over there.
I think the point I'm trying to make is that we know we can wait and see on whether you guys move. I mean, obviously everybody would prefer to move now, but the prudent thing to do is to wait and see. But you got a contractor that has an expectation that we do something. And if that something is we cancel the contract, they may have some costs to recover, but can't do nothing, I don't think. I think we have to at least say to them, here's what we're going to do. If they're willing to say, yeah, we'll wait 6 months knowing that you all will do something, then that would be ideal. But I guess we may have to come back to you in June and say, we've got some action to take. Am I misreading that, Scott?
No, that's right. And that was the crux of my email is, look, here's our current situation. Here's an update. I hadn't spoken to them since, I guess, February. And I said, look, this is the situation. But, as a last resort, what if we had to just cancel this whole contract? What costs would we incur for the materials that you've already spent the money on? And that's what I'm waiting to hear to kind of see where we stand. And of course, there's no way to put it in the budget what the additional rent would be until I'm kind of putting the cart before the horse, because without a lease, a negotiated lease that their board says, okay, we'll accept this much rent, I would just be guessing anyway to try to put it in the budget.
So let me ask a question. So that's where we're at, essentially waiting on what's determined to be the lease proposal from GMWSS. Is that correct? Scott?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And second, does the potential exist that similar type of work would need to be done at the new site that the contractor could do at the new site to offset the current situation?
Absolutely. We'll still need the teller window. We'll still need at least one door, maybe two. I don't know until we get over there and talk to the contractor about it. So yes, definitely. That's why we're in a holding pattern, because we were thinking we would move forward with this with the water company, negotiate a lease, and then all of that. I mean, they'd still have to come out and remeasure. I'm sure there would be some adjustments, but basically the project would proceed at a different location.
And the holdup is the pandemic. It's the financial impact rather than anything that GMWSS or the Revenue Commission is doing. We were in the middle of the idea of negotiating a contract, and then all this happened and we stopped.
So for purposes of this budget, it's appropriate that Scott budget the status quo, which he's done, and going to have further discussions with the vendor involved to see how we proceed with them. Is that it in a nutshell?
I think so. And I think then probably what we will do once we get that information, we have a little more solid ground to stand on, then maybe whatever we do, one way or the other, could be decided at the mid-year point at the very latest.
Okay.
That sound like a plan?
Seems reasonable to me. So if this is presented for review and discussion, does this require action on our part now, Scott, or we want to put that off to next month?
Well, if I'm not making any changes to it, I think could we adopt it as presented, and that will be our final, and then would I need to present it again at the next month? That I'm not quite sure of.
No, I think just
Right through preliminary and right final, and have the commissioners approve it if you want.
Okay, I will do that.
So is that something we can do today, in your opinion, Andrew?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You all are happy with it.
Well, I mean, it's the budget is what it is, and it's the best effort to reflect what our reality is, knowing like the city and the county are going to do. We're going to have to do an amended budget at some point during the fiscal year.
Right.
I'll move to approve.
Daggone it, Dr. Hub.
Well, I was politely going to wait for Tom. I didn't want to interrupt Tom.
I'll second Dr. Hub's motion to approve the budget as presented.
So you can do the rest of the motions. I'll be quiet.
No. Was that your motion, Dr. Hub?
It was, but I'd be quiet.
Thank you, David.
Please let the record reflect that Dr. Hub made it and I seconded it.
I think Jessica's got that. Okay, all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Congratulations, Scott. Your budget is approved unanimously.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Well, it helps when we get good information and we understand the circumstances. It makes the approval a lot easier. Scott, we had listed a general discussion. Are there issues that are on your mind that we need to weigh in or talk about today?
Well, I did also give you, like I did last month, an attachment with items that require no board action, that are just information only. And there's a number of bullet points there. So if you've had an opportunity to review them, if you have questions, now would be the time to do it. If not, we can proceed.
Sounds good. Any commissioners or Jessica or Andrew have any questions about those, about that report? That's actually a time saver for us, Scott. It's helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If there is no discussion on that topic, and I guess we're to item 9, which is our next meeting.
Yes, that's the normal scheduled date, the 4th Wednesday in June.
Okay, and we're calling it as a special meeting since we anticipate it being a Zoom meeting as well, Scott.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
So it's the 24th.
27th.
27th.
I'm sorry.
No, you're right. It is the 24th.
Yeah, I was.
Date needs to reflect 24.
Typo.
Okay. We'll let the record reflect that our next special called meeting will be June 24th and not June 27th.
My mistake. I apologize.
That's a pretty minor one, Scott.
It's possible that I'll have a conflict that date, but as you guys know, either Gina or Billy are certainly they're great proxies on my behalf. So
Sounds good. We'll see who shows up on the screen that day, Dr. Ho.
okay.
And I will change the budget to final, and I will send it to Stacy, Gina, and Michelle.
Good. Scott, Andrew, Jessica, anything else that we need to do during this meeting?
I think that covers it.
That covers us?
We're all good.
Oh, great. We did that in 28 minutes. Nice job, everybody. Hey, Andrew and Judge, could you all stay on just a minute after we conclude this meeting? I had a question for you.
Let me kick us off the streaming, and then we'll do that.
Okay,
Need a
thank you.
motion to adjourn.
Is there a
I'd
motion
like
to,
to make a motion to adjourn.
thank you,
I will
Judge.
second that motion.
And we're all